The workers of the Yutime Chinese oil refinery in the Middle East will be freed from the structure by a private security team from China after enduring constant attacks from mercenary troops in the increasing oil conflicts. Commander Dragon Luo, who is in charge of the group, is currently focusing on a portion of a photograph of his long-lost family. When they finally reach the factory, they discover that it has sustained significant damage as a result of constant rebel attacks. When they first meet Professor Qing, the company's leader, she quickly starts outlining their evacuation preparations, telling them that the only way to get to the Green Zone is by traveling across the Highway of Death. Former U.S. Marine Chris meets with Henry, the leader of a mercenary squad that Chris enjoys making fun of. With the goal to capture an international criminal who is being transported to the Green Zone, Henry carries a sizable sum of money. Chris, though, declines the offer. Chris then goes back to his hometown to take care of a large group of orphaned children. Owen arrives to have a look at the damaged water pump in the village. Because of the serious damage and the high expense of repair, Chris starts to think twice about accepting Henry's offer. Employee May observes from the window, hesitant to confront Luo as he and his crew formulate a strategy to safeguard the civilians back at the facility. They turn off all the computers the following morning, and Qing gives May the key after placing it in her backpack. The crew then directs the staff to board a number of buses without realizing that Qing's bus is being marked by a traitor. May is unhappy because she would be riding on Luo's bus. The crew is now on their own because the helicopters that delivered them will be flying to the Green Zone first. Because it turns out she is Luo's daughter, May accidentally drops her notebook as the buses drive off and reveals she has the second half of the photo. However, Luo makes no attempt to strike up a nice dialogue. They eventually arrive to the Highway of Death, a part of the road lined with traps and wrecked vehicles that fell victim to them. Almost nobody manages to cross it alive because it is so perilous. Although there are children pleading for assistance everywhere, they are all caught in the trap, and the buses keep running. Luo just pushes two automobiles that are in the path with the front of the bus as they come across them. Things start exploding up around the wrecked automobiles, but the crew merely keeps moving forward since they know it's all a ruse to draw in the defenseless. When Luo notices May's anxiety, he offers to look out for her, but May promptly calls him out. She is aware that he will defend anyone needs protecting and that he doesn't truly care about his family because he left his daughter and his ailing wife. The buses successfully traverse the Highway of Death, only to find a sandstorm blocking the road in front of them. This is strange because they had checked the weather earlier, and it was expected to be clear. They are forced to drive through the sand, and Luo observes it isn't acting like a typical storm. Even worse, all signals on the team members' systems are blocked, and they are unable to communicate with one another. May sees something close at that very time, but it immediately vanishes, so she dismisses it as her imagination. Mai is really correct, though. Chris and the mercenaries are tracking the buses through the storm and are able to choose which one to board because of the mark the assailant left earlier. Once in place, they use a hook to pull the last bus toward the automobile, climb on it using a platform, and then detonate the car. This causes the car to bounce and fracture the bus front glass since it is still wire attached to the bus. This allows two mercenaries to get past it, and they kill the guards right away before seizing possession of the bus. Meanwhile, two more mercenaries board the next bus and attempt to board it, but the guard confronts them fairly there. The guard and the mercenary engage in hand-to-hand combat after being disarmed, but it only takes a few blows for the guard to be punched through the bus window and out. She thankfully lays down in time to escape being ran over. In order to complete their goal, the mercenaries board this bus as well and pull over. Chris is furious when Henry and his mercenaries take a handful of the bus passengers captive after they have been freed because it appears that they are civilians rather than criminals. Henry explains that everything is all a ruse. When the major buses eventually emerge from the storm a few minutes later, they discover they are missing two buses. Luo is convinced that this storm is not natural despite their futile attempts to get in touch with the guards. In order to aid, the helicopters return and fly Luo and May about to examine the region. This enables them to learn that the enemy had been using a jet engine to push the sand. Following the route taken by the vehicle with the engine, The chopper locates one of the buses with a guard inside, who informs the group that Americans are responsible for all of this. The second chopper discovers the mercenary vehicles while traveling over a separate path. Both sides commence fire right away, and the guard hits a mercenary car, causing it to explode. Chris is a skilled driver who helps the other vehicles avoid all of the ensuing bullets until they come to a stop and seek shelter so they may retaliate more effectively. The mercenaries fire first and hit the helicopter, forcing it to crash, as the chopper tries to turn to grab them from behind. While Luo's aircraft locates the final bus and finds the majority of passengers inside, they have taken Cheng and her aides captive. The remainder of the crew is traveling to the green zone via bus. When the mercenaries return to the base, Chris shoves Henry and asks him why he's been taken there. At that point, it becomes clear that Owen, the head of the organization that has been assaulting the refinery, recruited the mercenaries. He claims Henry is too young and desperate to be his security officer, and that he is now plotting to take everything for himself in order to gain a lot of money. He also offers Chris a position as his security officer. Chris declines him and departs despite his brother's requests for him to stay. Henry then tries to convince Owen that he is unnecessary and that he is capable of handling the task, but Owen responds by shooting him, and his men then kill the mercenaries who aren't on his personal squad. After a little while, Luo is back in the chopper and observes Chris passing past. He thinks about firing but decides it would be better to just follow him. They'll drop Luo down and take off since the helicopter's fuel is running low. Chris, who is now overcome with remorse, enters his home again and strikes a picture frame. Luo discovers him when one of the children invites him to go outside and play. He grabs the ball and starts hurling it towards Chris while yelling questions, but Chris is silent. Luo doesn't want to scare the child, so he pretends to leave when the child interrupts to beg for the ball while actually continuing to follow Chris. After that, Chris drives out in his pickup to meet Henry where they usually meet. He is shocked to find his brother's dead body, which Owen had put there to mock him, as he enters the abandoned building. Chris jumps on Luo from behind as he slowly makes his way inside as well, and a fight breaks out. Both guys are skilled fighters, and while they repeatedly ask each other questions and exchange several kicks and punches, either will give in. Chris pulls out a knife, but Luo knows how to stop him, and soon both men are attacking with everything they can find around the room. Then Luo dodges Chris' attempt to push a car into him by dragging Henry's body along with him. This prevents Henry's body from being crushed. When Chris prevents Luo from throwing a grenade, they begin to argue and discover they are both fighting the same enemy. A group of French authorities get up at that point and start demanding money. It appears Owen has also duped them. Chris unintentionally removes the pin from the grenade while trying to reprimand them, preventing the explosion, and the French guys escape. After monitoring the outside to make sure the French guys are simply going back to their vehicles to retrieve their weapons and start firing, Kais and Luo reinserted the pin to stop the explosion. The two run back inside and start bickering over where to locate the correct rounds once more. As a result of their inability to locate what they require, Chris opens a breach in the wall, and Luo delivers him grenades that are then tossed through the entrance. After a few grenades, the firing abruptly pauses, giving Luo the time to pull his rifle and question Chris once more. However, Chris just emerges to check on his truck, which is now completely damaged. They set up a number of explosives to blow up the structure, after which Chris finally informs Luo about Owen before they go. Owen wants Ching to get him access to the reserves so that he may steal the oil, but in the meanwhile, he takes Ching and the other captives to the refinery. When Ching first refuses, Owen starts taking hostages to get her to speak. She ultimately snaps to save her son, who turns out to be the last one. The codes and computer key, according to Ching, were left in her luggage, which she does not own. Ching's son orders them to locate her phone, which is also in the bag, while Owen becomes irate. Luo and Chris return to the village to see how the kids are doing. Mei picks up the call when she hears Cheng's phone ring in the bag, but the caller hangs up right away. Luo makes a call to his team to make sure everyone arrived in the green zone safely. He then sees Chris singing and dancing to the kids, so he joins them by imitating the animals in the song. After that, when the two go outside to eat, Chris says he spotted May's notepad laying about. He grabbed it to add his number to it because he wanted to hit on her. But when Luo revealed that she was her father's daughter, all of his lewd remarks vanished instantly. Chris describes how his father died fighting for his nation, but Luo tells him that fighting for one's country also entails fighting for one's family, as Chris' father had been doing for his boys. May overhears this, and now that she does, she can better understand her dad. They hear strange footsteps suddenly enter the village. While Luo and Chris skulk about to learn Owen's men are after them, May takes the kids off. While Luo leaps onto the roof and takes out a sniper, Chris enters a building and knocks out a man by slamming him against a wall. A second gunman instantly closes in on him, but Chris joins him and leaps on the assailant, bringing down the roof and sending the two down. They scurry out of the building and hide till the next man arrives. When Luo signals that he is getting close, Chris leaps on him to take him out before he can fire. Fortunately, Luo comes to Chris and orders him to kill the next man since Chris fails to grasp the other gesture he makes. Chris then retakes the rooftops, and Luo enters via the rear and starts fighting every guy he sees, easily taking them out one by one. Chris also takes down a couple bad people, but by doing so he discloses where he is, and the enemy fires a rocket at his balcony, knocking him to the ground. Fortunately, Chris rolls away just in time to avoid being struck by the tower. Chris then goes in search of May and grabs Cheng's phone, bringing it to Owen's men later. The villagers rush to the home's defense, but the adversary counters by discharging a grenade. In order to prevent any further violence, Chris grants their request for the bag despite May's protests. Owen's soldiers essentially leave as a result of this. May outlines the enemy's motives for wanting the bag in the morning. Chris initially doesn't give a damn if some moron steals a little bit of oil, but May points out that this would truly be the largest oil robbery in history and how it would impact the entire nation. Chris provides his truck with the engine to go there because he now wants to assist. May is told by Luo not to go because it's too risky, and she issues a warning that they shouldn't use firearms inside the refinery to prevent an explosion. May discovers there is still one automobile accessible for her after they have left. When the bag reaches the refinery, Owen hands it to Ching, who right once turns on the computers to rescue her son. Oil begins to flow through the pipelines and is eventually delivered to several enormous ships that are waiting for a deal at the coast. The guards open fire and even blast a rocket when the two eventually make it there, but Chris is skilled at evading everything. When an oil tanker blocks the path, the driver turns sharply and crashes into a platform, which falls and creates a dust cloud. He then drives the truck through all the roadblocks and into the refinery. Even though everyone is now aware of their presence, they may still sneak around because of the dust. In order to prevent the oil from being halted, Owen grabs the computer's key, departs with his personal guards, and orders the others to pursue the invaders. Returning to the group, Luo scales the tower, but before Chris can follow, they are both encircled by security personnel, sparking yet another altercation. Fortunately, the two are highly adept at protecting themselves from numerous adversaries. Chris grabs a large pipe to hit numerous guys simultaneously, while Luo stands atop a pipe so that fewer men can pursue him simultaneously. Chris uses the same pipe to lift Luo back up as he nearly falls while evading an attack, hitting a few soldiers before moving Luo to a different platform. As additional soldiers show up to continue the battle, Owen takes this opportunity to bid them farewell. After a few more punches, Chris and Luo manage to enter the main building after splitting up to continue punching men out without the use of weapons. A guard is waiting for them, so Chris attacks him with a hose and Luo tosses a dagger to divert him. Luo takes advantage of the opportunity to force Ching and his kid to flee, at which point they start battling the guard and trade blows before hiding behind the computers. Luo had to turn over and nearly gets shot as a result of their earlier attempt to exchange guns in the wrong manner. Chris and the security guard both start firing at once, but after a few shots, Chris runs out of ammunition. Luo was able to sneak up on the man and leap on him by surprise before forcing him through the nearest window thanks to Chris, who had devised a strategy and started chatting non-stop as a diversion. Chris pursues Owen while Luo takes care of the security guard, but he is unable to outrun an automobile due to his slow running pace. Mei then shows up in Chris' second vehicle, and the two of them pursue Owen together. Chris reveals that the American method is to put firearms everywhere, and there are weapons beneath the seat. Chen observes from a distance as Luo and the guard engage in hand-to-hand combat back in the refinery. The guard tries to flee by climbing the equipment as Luo turns to order her to go, so Luo stops him by making him slide and obstructing his eyesight with a fire-blocking foam pistol. Unfortunately, the rifle malfunctions, and Luo also stumbles. Now that foam is pouring down everywhere, Luo grabs some wires to fasten to his belt so he won't drown. Luo immediately knocks the guard away as he tries to leap on him once more, and soon the two men are climbing the building while still engaged in combat. Due to the cables, Luo obtains the upper hand when they fall into the foam and forces the other person up against the equipment, ultimately knocking him unconscious. Luo then uses a fan to blow all the foam away before departing. When Owen's security starts firing on the highway, Chris retaliates right away and keeps firing until the adversary runs out of ammunition. Then Owen's automobile veers off the road because he doesn't believe Chris' aging truck can make it across the desert. Mei successfully navigates the first of many hills in front of them, but the second one proves to be more difficult, and the car crashes. Mei and Chris are at a loss for what to do when Luo, fortunately, appears in the engine truck and the group pursues Owen once more. They quickly discover the truck is moving too slowly, but Chris explains the engine isn't just for creating sandstorms. When he clicks a button, the engine roars to life, propelling the truck at such a high rate of speed that it reaches the oil trucks and collides with one of them. When the oil truck soars high and collides with the other trucks, a series of explosions ensues that cause Owen to lose all of the oil and launch his automobile as well. The driver succumbs to burns, but Owen is still alive and just has a half-damaged face. Owen begs Chris for money once more out of desperation, but when Chris declines, Owen pulls the body out and drives off. Luo attempts to catch up with him, but the truck becomes stuck since the tank is leaking and producing mud. When Mei presses a separate button as instructed by Chris, two side sleighs are launched, using the engine's power to propel the truck over the sand. When Chris and Luo eventually locate Owen in his vehicle, they push it into a precipice as Chris grabs onto the side of the truck, but Owen moves the car out of the path. Chris ignores Luo's warning that they are about to fall as well. Later, Luo ties himself and Mei together so that they may jump out of the truck just before it is about to tumble, knocking Chris with them. The couple finds the rope is linked to Owen's car as they glance up, and when he sees this, he proceeds to drag them down with him. Fortunately, Luo breaks off the line just in time, allowing Owen and Mei to land safely on a rock platform as the car falls down the cliff. Owen grinned, believing he had won. Mei and Luo unsuccessfully attempt to phone Chris after Owen crashes to his death. At that point, Mei finds Luo holding her notebook and opens it to see him reassembling the picture. The father and daughter embrace and make up, but Chris, who has been ascending all along, interrupts the tender moment. When Chris tries to hit on Mei, they assist him and another conflict with Luo ensues. They are aware that they are trapped, and the only way they can escape is to shout for assistance. In the meantime, Luo's squad surrounds the ships that were taking the oil and detains all of the suspects. The group is saved shortly after, and they return to the village to put the pump back together and bring the water back. The squad announces their new mission and interrupts the party by inviting Chris to join them.